Welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line, the podcast where we meet people from business, charities and politics who are a force for good. In each episode, I talk to my guests about their inner side and how their internal changes have led to their outer success stories. We talk about the failures, spirituality, and sometimes the painful experiences that have made them the unique individuals they are today. The main aim of this is for us to learn from them and be inspired by them for our own lives. So, if you desire change in yourself and the world around you, do keep listening. And remember, please, to hit the subscribe on your podcast platform of choice to make sure you never miss an episode. Hello, my name is Paul Hargreaves. I'm the founder and Chief Empowerment Officer of Cotswold Fair and Flourish, two businesses that have put people and planet before profit. In 2015, we became one of the first B Corps in the UK, and I've written two books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. I'm absolutely passionate about changing the world for better, and realised many years ago that to do this, we must also change ourselves. The outer impact of people, planet and profit has to be mirrored by an inner change. And that's what I call my fourth bottom line.
I try not use artificial intelligence before I've used my own AI, and when I say that I mean ancient intelligence.
Oh yeah, I like that.
I'm teaching people about their three ancient intelligence centers, which is the head, the heart and the gut.
Right.
So we've got the brain, we know, and if you slow your brain waves down to alpha, theta, that's where you do your best work. That's where artists create art and musicians create music, and we tap into flow states. And most of us are hardly spending time in that state, or we just don't know how to.
My guest today is Celynn Morin. Celynn, the wellbeing whisperer, is a performance, energy and resilience speaker, as well as a registered dietitian. A lifelong learner and a lover of poetry, movement and human connection, Celynn believes that CEOs should think of themselves as chief energy officers or chief effervescent officers. A South African by birth, with her family roots coming from the Champagne region of France, she brings both groundedness, grace and effervescence to everything she does. When she's not inspiring leaders and their teams, you'll find her cooking, drinking champagne, walking on pilgrimages, partner dancing, or exploring shamanic and tantric studies to deepen her understanding of presence, energy and leadership. Celynn loves walking barefoot in vineyards and forests, and one of her friends told me she would talk about absolutely anything, which is great for a podcast. Celynn, welcome to The Fourth Bottom Line.
Thank you so much, Paul.
So, we've got a bit of South Africa and France in your background, so tell me, where were you actually born? Was that South Africa?
Yes, Johannesburg.
Okay, and French parents?
My parents left France in 1969 and I was born 9 years later.
Okay, you don't need to tell us how old you are, which you just did. So what was your childhood like in South Africa?
Wonderful. If I think back, I think of lots of open horizons. We got to do the typical South African things like going on safari once or twice a year. Lots of freedom and time and space, There were no mobile phones, social media, not much television.
I mean, I've only been once for a couple of weeks, but it is. If people ask me, I always say it's one of the countries I definitely want to go back to. 2 weeks was nowhere near long enough.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful place, especially the coastline, from Cape Town all the way around to Durban.
I actually drove from Joburg to Cape Town via Sabi Sands, so did a safari and then drove all the way through
Beautiful.
What was Swaziland. It's got another name now, hasn't it? Can't remember. Eswatini, actually. And then down along the coast.
The garden route.
Stunning. Yeah. But I guess the time you grew up, apartheid was still in full swing at that point, was it? Or
yes.
And how did that impact? Were you aware of that when you were there? I mean, you're a small child, probably not. But
What I was aware of is when I was in high school, I was the last all-white year.
Okay.
So there were children coming to the school of colour, but not in my year.
Right.
And the older I got, the closer I got to being, 16, 17, 18 and finishing school, that became very obvious to me.
Okay. And were you still there when Nelson Mandela was released from prison? And
Yes.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay. So how was that? I mean, he is one of my all-time heroes. His book, autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, I think, is one of the best leadership books anyone has ever written. All 900 pages of it. Absolutely stunning. And I've read it twice. And it's just full of beautiful examples of authentic leadership. I'm getting emotional talking about this, but I haven't read it for ages. But I think it formed so much of what I have become with a leader, just some of the stuff he talks about in there.
I mean, the two words that come to my mind when I think of him is inspiration and forgiveness. I think we need that today more than ever.
Yes. How he forgave, even some of the prison warders that treated him and his, fellow prisoners absolutely appallingly. And yet he reached out to them with love and grace, didn't he? Didn't intend to go there, but so what was your school experience like then?
I was very studious and compliant as a girl, so I learned at a young age that if I did well at school, I would get attention from my father, especially. So that's part of my development, because I associate with the archetype of the achiever. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Enneagram. That's one of the tools.
Yes, I am actually. Yes.
And I know it comes from there, because when I did well at school, my father would leave notes on masking tape that was then stuck to my bedroom mirror. And because he was already gone to work when I woke up in the morning, and then I would see notes from him. So I was like, okay, I've got to get gold stars or do well.
What were these notes saying?
Often well done, commending me.
Right.
So at a young age, I started to identify achieving things, especially at school or through extramural activities, as then getting rewarded, which hasn't served me that well as an adult, because then a lot of my value seemed to come from if I did well or I achieved things, as opposed to just being. We all deserve attention and love just by existing.
No, it didn't leave notes on the mirror. That's like a forerunner of text messages, isn't it? Yes. Before mobile phones. Quite like that. But my dad was similar. Very loved stuff that got brownie points. But a lot of my value came from doing rather than being. So I can relate to that. So talking of values, what were the values that kind of you grew up with your mum and dad, even at school? What were these values that you think you were taught at that age?
Hard work, kindness, generosity.
And have they stayed with you since then?
Also curiosity. I definitely got curiosity from both my parents. Yeah.
That's an unusual one. How did that manifest itself?
Well, I always used to ask questions, and they never made me feel like any question was silly. So I know that I would often say why when my mom or dad responded to something, like, why was the sky blue? Why? And so to this day, I love asking questions of myself, of others.
Were you the oldest child?
Yes.
Yes. So I was also a question asker, oldest. My oldest, Josh, was a great why questioner. It was his favourite word when he was 3 and 4 was why, everything. That's interesting, because I think curiosity is probably an underrated aspect of leadership.
Yeah, you mentioned it in your book, and I'm actually speaking on curiosity at an event later this week.
Wow.
We're doing an interesting curiosity game.
Okay.
Because it can be cultivated through the quality of your questioning.
Okay.
And how you choose to speak to yourself in your head.
And this is to leaders, is it? Or
it's to a big team, 170 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that sounds really interesting. Who would you say is the first person that believed in you?
As a child or as a young adult?
Well, the first
I think
person.
So the first person.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about her in a long time. A lady called Jeanette, who gave me a children's picture book of Bible stories. And I think she believed in me from, I think she saw the spiritual seeker, searcher in me.
Okay.
Because I was looking. I still am. I'm deeply interested in different belief systems and consciousness and meaning of life and what we may call God or collective consciousness. And yeah, she's the first person who really saw that because she gave me books. I knew that she had seen it.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was going to ask you actually whether there was a spirituality to your childhood.
No, my parents would have said they were Roman Catholic, but they both never went to church once they left France. So I actively took myself to the Roman Catholic Church at about the age of 11 or 12.
Okay, that's unusual.
I know. And I asked to have a study.
What was it? What was it that, apart from the curiosity probably, what took you there?
The desire to connect with where I come from.
Right, okay.
And where I may go to. Yeah.
And did you have a sense of, because obviously just reading a bit about you, it seems like you are now very connected with the land and nature. Was that, did you grow up in the countryside or the
No,
city?
I didn't. Quite city-like, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm really enjoying reconnecting or connecting more deeply with nature.
Seems that way, yes. Not too many people walk around vineyards in their bare feet.
I was barefoot this morning at Great Yarmouth on the beach watching the sunrise. And grounding now is a thing, you know. There's signs to show how good it is for us.
Isn't it a bit cold, though, this time of year?
Yes. Yes.
I did some unintentional grounding and I walk. We had a really cold snap between Christmas and New Year. I went for a long walk along the Thames path and unfortunately it was flooded with ice on the top. So I was, for half the time, knee-deep in water with just walking boots on. That was a bit of grounding. So let's just go back a bit before I get on, because I'm really keen to talk about the wellbeing side of what you do now. But so we went to school. What age did you finish school?
18.
18. Then did you go to university or?
I did, yeah,
Okay.
in Pretoria. So I studied dietetics. But I first took a year off and I went traveling backpacking around Europe and North America.
Okay. And the dietetics, what led you into that?
I knew from a young age that I wanted to be a healer and a teacher, and I was really intrigued by my pharmacist because, you know, we would always go to the pharmacist and then not often to the doctor. So I thought I wanted to be a pharmacist because they teach and they heal, you know. And when I was looking at available degrees in the medical field, I came across dietetics, and I love food. I mean, being French and brought up with food, and I always knew that food could heal. Like I understood that, and I wanted to know more about that. So that's how I got into dietetics.
So we can go down this rabbit hole now. So how does food heal? How does that work?
Well, almost every medicine comes from some kind of the molecule that creates it is often a botanical, you know. So in nature, if you have a headache, there's some herbs that can help with that. If you've got a tummy ache, you know, you can drink like ginger to help with nausea. We know that we need certain vitamins and minerals and fiber for a good microbiome. So that's what I mean when I knew that food had an inherent way to heal, not just feed us or give us calories. It wasn't just functional in that respect.
So I know you do work with leaders and companies now, and I think you bring in some of the dietitian side of it as well. But,
yes, gut health especially.
So, but after your degree, did you ever practice as just a dietitian without the boardroom stuff, as it were?
I absolutely did.
Yeah,
I did for about 5 years.
Okay.
I worked in a medical practice and I saw a lot of patients with heart disease, diabetes, and irritable bowel syndrome, because they would often get diagnosed, because back then people didn't really see a dietitian for fun. So they would get diagnosed and then the doctor would say, I'd like you to see Celynn.
Okay.
And then they would come see me and pay me money, and they wouldn't.
What's good? They
change.
paid you.
Well, they wouldn't
Be ashamed
change.
to do it for free, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and then I felt often very frustrated because I could see something wasn't connecting. I was giving people great advice, but people don't change. We don't change easily, especially around food and behaviors around our health and well-being. So I felt a bit disillusioned. And then after 5 years, I came across Vitality and BankMed. They were health insurers doing proactive work in terms of showing companies and employers that you can save money if you help employees identify that they might be at risk rather than wait till they get diagnosed.
Yeah. So this is the same Vitality that do
Yeah.
health insurance, which we're a customer of theirs, actually.
Okay.
All our employees
Yeah,
are.
they really pioneered the
Yes. And
behavior change.
they're good at doing the preventative stuff, aren't they? Because you can
Yes.
points and stuff. Sam will be loving this, who's my PA, who's a big advocate of vitality. I'll just give her a shout out there. So the disillusion bit, what was it that caused that primarily?
That I think I took on too much. I thought I was getting it wrong if people didn't lose weight or didn't manage their blood sugars or didn't change their diet. And I could see they wanted to. And I also realized it felt like something was missing because I was just talking to people like this. And now, because I have more experience, I know that people need immersive experiences. They need to embody new concepts, like actually taste a food or be involved in making a smoothie. And back then I was just giving out diet sheets.
Right.
And so it wasn't effective. And so I felt like, should I go back and study psychology? Should I do something else? And I'm so grateful that I met the second person that I think really believed in me, Jules Newton. She was a founder of a great business in Johannesburg, and she told me about Marcus Buckingham and Now Discover Your Strengths.
Okay.
And I did that, and then I realized what my strengths were, and I was like, I'm not playing to these strengths. I'm just focusing on what I'm getting wrong and making it difficult. And then she just opened me up, and that's when I came across BankMed and Vitality, and I started doing talks and workshops in the workplace, in the big banks in Johannesburg.
Right. So this was, I guess you were probably late 20s at this point?
Yeah.
And that's now emerged into a broader wellbeing side, hasn't it, with all the other stuff you're doing?
Well, what happened is I then started working as a dietitian inside some businesses.
Right.
So the bigger ones, especially the banks, would say, well, come and be inside our occupational health clinic. And there was a speaker agent who saw me speak at one of the lunch and learns. And he came up to me afterwards and he said, "You're pretty good." And he's like, "What did you get paid for this?" And I said, "I didn't charge. I've got a practice here. I'm promoting myself." And he said, "I think you should go to a boot camp with Frank Furness, who's now in my mastermind."
Okay. Yeah.
And that's when I discovered that there are people called professional speakers who get paid to speak.
Yeah.
And then I joined the PSA in the UK, and then the PSA in South Africa
So this
opened.
is quite a long time ago then.
Yeah, around about 2006, 2007.
So how much now of what you do is the dietitian side? I mean, I know there aren't any lines between this stuff, but...
I would say it's about a quarter. So I do physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. And then the nutrition piece fits under the physical.
And do you work with people on a one-to-one basis with that, or
No,
groups, or?
I work with groups, so I love to speak. So I do mastermind workshops and keynote speaking at conferences.
If someone, if you're helping people have a better diet, and I said to you, right, what's the one thing I should change tomorrow? What would it be?
I would encourage people to be curious about how their DNA is or would affect how they should eat. So now these tests are quite readily available.
Stuff, is it?
Yes. Okay. And the one thing generally for most of us is to look after your gut microbiome by eating a diversity of plant-based foods. So Michael Pollan really, I think, nailed the best nutritional advice. Eat real food, not too much, mostly plants.
Because a lot of people now are talking about the gut microbiome. I don't remember anyone talking about this 20 years ago. Were they? I mean, you were in the field, so were they talking about it and we just didn't hear it? Or?
Do you know why I think it didn't really come up is that, in the 80s when it was Chris Barnard who did the first heart transplant in South Africa. So we studied a lot around the heart and the cardiovascular system. So we understood about strokes and cholesterol, heart disease. And then in the 90s and 2000s, we moved into neuroscience and the brain. And now, for the last decade or two, we've been looking more at the gut as the second brain. So I think the research is only really coming out, and then it's reaching mainstream media because of that.
So, I mean, you would know better than me, so let's find out more. So someone told me that there's a huge number of nerves and almost part of the brain is in the gut. Is that right? Yeah,
and there's a lot more messages going up from the gut to the brain than the other way around. So the gut actually speaks more to the brain than the brain speaks to the gut.
And it could be, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've heard sometimes our craving for certain foods isn't actually us, but it's the bacteria saying, I want more sugar. I mean, how does this even work?
Because if we were to break you down right now, your bacteria and the microbiome, the universe that exists, the ecosystem inside your gut is I think it outnumbers you like 10 to 1, perhaps even more. So it's prolific, it's massive. And they do. They impact what vitamins we can absorb, what neurochemicals we make, what food we need and might crave.
And so does anyone, when you're talking to companies about this stuff, do you get asked questions or asked for advice on, do whole companies ever say, right, people, let's eat more healthily as a business? Does that kind of thing ever happen? Or?
It does. And, I think in the beginning it's such a fine line, right? Because you can't tell people what to do, but you can facilitate. If you know that if somebody has a low GI balanced breakfast and lunch, they're going to perform better in the afternoon because their blood sugar is going to be stable, so their brain can work at its best. And some companies are doing that, but sometimes it's just tokenism. It's a big bowl of fruit, and then no one really grabs the fruit. So I think there's so much more we could be doing, especially around education, helping people understand why we should be looking at preparing food and moving away from processed foods. And maybe subsidizing, because often the unhealthy food is sometimes, it looks like it's cheaper. So for people that are working towards a budget, it's sometimes harder to justify making healthier choices that are maybe organic or more plant-based.
So what could a company do, apart from the fruit bowl, if they wanted to encourage their people to eat more healthily? What?
Education. I think when people understand the why behind something, they will find a how. So bring in, not just speakers like me, but maybe hip and happening chefs that, and then it also depends on the demographic of the business and the generation. But, bring in people that could show people or show them how to prepare healthier meals or what kind of options there are out there. And not just make it about nutrition, right? Because it's multifactorial,
Yes, well, let's get on to that, because I want to dig down into your purpose and reason for being, can you describe your purpose?
I would say my purpose or my raison d'être is...
Love the way you said that, by the way. Yeah.
To help leaders lead themselves better with more energy so that they can then lead by virtue of their role modeling and the privilege that they have to lead others.
So something I've read that you wrote is, I was interested in who leaders are when the mask comes off as who they are when they're in the boardroom. So how would you encourage them to take their masks off?
Well, to be authentic in how they relate about them and to be more self-aware. So when we run some immersive experiences together, well-being is deep because you're touching on something that's really important. Without health, we don't have any form of wealth. And especially when we look at maybe emotional well-being, which relates to the quality of our relationships and how we feel, how we process emotions, what we think of our past and how that then determines our present and our future.
And if you're invited into a company where it's obvious to you that there's far too much cortisol floating around the boardroom, unhealthy culture let's use that word unhealthy in a broad term. Where would you start? How do you, A, what do you get asked to come and do, and B, does it sometimes, well, actually, I can't do that here because clearly there's another problem. How do you deal with that?
I find lately what I do less and say less, and my state and my sense of calm often influences the room, and then I get people to experience it. So we do a 1 minute or 3 minutes, and then we build up to 6 minutes and maybe 10 minutes of stillness, mindfulness, presence. And I can see the masks dropping then. When somebody who's in high cortisol, high stress, fight or flight, super aroused, when you give them an opportunity to relax, it can be quite confronting. But if you do it gently, and then they start feeling, I just had an aha moment. And then I speak about, that's because your brainwaves slow down into alpha. And that's where you can access your creative thinking. And I think when there's a combination of experiential with understanding the science, then at least the audiences I like to reach are much more inclined to lean in.
Because we do this in our meetings, but I know when we first started doing it, there was some resistance. People just aren't used to that. They are now.
What do you do? Things like gratitude?
We do different things. We always aim to have some kind of connection with ourselves at the start of meetings, which is normally quiet or maybe music or something like that. Ask people to think of connecting with their bodies, and then have some aspect of connecting with each other, which is sometimes a quick check-in of how people are feeling that day. So we do that as part of our, it's a kind of ingrained in our culture now, but initially some people find it challenging because they haven't done that before. But I'm interested in what you said about the science behind it, because I think if I had known that, and having that for the more thinking people in the room, that might have helped. So what is the science behind the stillness at the start of meetings?
Well, specifically around that, I'm just thinking when we are still and we allow our intuition to come online, we help the prefrontal cortex and areas of the brain that are involved with big picture thinking and creativity rather come to the forefront, rather than the narrow focus, when we're in like, I've got a problem solved, I've got an email to send out right now. So we tend to rush and do the opposite of stillness. So often doing nothing might feel like a waste of time, but we've had that experience where you're walking the dog or cooking or you're in the shower and you problem solve. You remember something when you weren't even thinking about that issue at all. And that's often got to do with brain states and also our whole nervous system. Because most of us are just, the moment we wake up, we're picking up our phones. We start releasing adrenaline and cortisol from minute one. And so we're wired and tired. And then we don't sleep well at night, and then we just perpetuate the cycle. And the stress cycle is addictive. That feeling of adrenaline, it's like caffeine or sugar. Also when you understand that potentially you could just be addicted to the feeling, and then to be self-compassionate and playful while you're trying to maybe make changes. Because if all the stuff was easy, we would all be doing it. It's not. That's why.
What's the worst thing about mobile phones, would you say?
Just one thing?
Well,
because I'm thinking of the dopamine impact that it has. So it's almost like gambling each time. And I even experience that. I sometimes find myself, especially when I'm restless and I'm not allowing myself to focus and I'm multitasking, I pick up my phone so much. I'm like, I don't need to be looking at my phone right now. I'm just trying to avoid boredom. And then also the just always being reachable. That's why I go on pilgrimages. It's why I try and spend time on my own in the morning. I don't put my phone on, if I can, for 2 hours. So I'd rather wake up at 6 than only look at my phone at 8, for instance. Those are my best days.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on, there's a lot of talk currently in the media about banning social media for under 16s. What do you think about that?
I really think we should.
Yeah.
I struggle with it, and I'm way older than 16. I'm so grateful I didn't have it when I was a teenager. I think my body image would be different.
So let's talk about what else you do in the kind of boardroom situation. Your whole, I won't say it in such a nice French way you did, the raison d'etre, reason for being is transformation and change. What are the biggest challenges you think in the boardrooms of today? That
we need to accept that we can't do everything, and at some point we need to choose enough over everything, and if we don't, we will lead to exhaustion, fatigue, and burnout. And what I mean by that is that there's always going to be, especially now in the age of AI, like something to learn, a strategy to think about, a client to reach out to, another LinkedIn, a contact to follow up on, or a book to read, or a podcast to listen to, always. And I think we're so bombarded by information, but we're missing wisdom. And that's where the stillness piece comes in. Is like, I think half an hour less on LinkedIn and sitting, consciously going inward and using techniques like gratitude or heart coherence or breathing, you'll probably get more wisdom in that time than what you might find out there. So that's a challenge, I think. So I often speak about boundaries and accepting what is enough for you as a leader.
There's too much content already. Before AI came along and made it even 10 times worse. So there is some stuff out there that's worth getting into and, learning from. But how do you filter it? Because, you said, it can just get completely overwhelming, can't it?
I try not use artificial intelligence before I've used my own AI. And when I say that, I mean ancient intelligence.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
I think, so at the moment I'm teaching...
I'm going to nick that one.
I'm teaching people about their 3 ancient intelligence centers, which is the head, the heart, and the gut.
Right.
So we've got the brain, we know, but if you're constantly in high beta brainwave activity, you're mental duping, catastrophizing potentially, narrow-focused. And if you slow your brainwaves down to alpha, theta, that's where you do your best work. That's where artists create art and musicians create music, and we tap into flow states. And most of us are hardly spending time in that state, or we just don't know how to.
So you're saying we're completely imbalanced towards the head currently, so we need to get more
And
heart.
and even in the head, we're more analytical, problem solving. So we need to get more heart, and then even once we understand the heart, is to drop down deeper into intuition or inner wisdom, which comes from.
How do we do that? So I come to you and I say, look, I want more. I want to be a more heart-filled leader.
Or the one
help me.
The cheapest thing that's always around, you don't have to subscribe, it's always available to you, is your breath. So I do a lot around the breath, because we know that when you slow down your breathing, especially if you do nasal breathing and you lengthen the exhale and you combine that with upright posture and relaxed muscles, you can turn on calm and alert, relaxed and awake, which is a wonderful state to be in.
Okay. How long do I need to do that for?
The more you practice, the easier it gets. Eventually it can take 1 to maybe 3 breaths.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought I had to sit there for half an hour.
No, I mean, you could. That taps in there. You might even tap into what we call theta brain state. Dr. Joe Dispenza speaks a lot about that and doing a lot of research. But if you want to manage your state, you can do it right now in one breath. You breathe in a little bit deeper than usual. And the technique I like to use, which is influenced by Wendy Palmer, she did a lot of work in leadership embodiment. Breathe in, thinking strong back. So you just elevate your posture and you give yourself a sense of strength and stability, because it's good to have your back. You've got to know where you stand.
Standing up or sitting down, what's best?
Either. I do this while I present, I do it while I drive. And then as you exhale, soft front, which means softening your muscles. We create a lot of tension in the stress response, so let your shoulders drop. I carry tension in my jaw, drop your tongue in your mouth. And also keeping an open heart. So you've got a strong back, where you stand, you've got strength, you're tapping into your inner dignity. But stay open. The world gives us reasons to guard and close our hearts. But as leaders now, I think more than ever, we need to stay open, feel our own feelings, and then connect authentically with others and be able to feel compassion, empathy, love.
Oh, this sounds great. So, right, we've done the heart. That's a little tip for you. Gut. If I want to get my gut more involved, how do I do that? 2
things. Stillness. Stillness doesn't have to be, I say stillness, it's more quiet, less stimulus. So for some people, I like to sit. My best friend likes to walk. So she does her best thinking when she's walking, but then not walking with a phone or with a podcast in your ears. Just walk, And David White, who's one of the poets that I really admire, and I did a pilgrimage with him in Japan, with him and his wife and a few others. And he actually spoke about the neuroscience of open horizons and how it helps with creativity and problem solving. So he often writes his best poetry because he's out in nature and specifically open horizons. So stillness, solitude, so that you can let your inner wisdom come out, as opposed to all the stimulus through information coming from the outside in.
So talk to me about these pilgrimages, because I think you've done a few. How long are they? If someone listening who wants to, this sounds interesting. How do I find one?
I generally find that they find me.
I did do one. One did find me.
Didn't you go to India?
Yeah.
And you spent,
8 days without a phone. And it's the transformational period of my life.
Yeah, pick that up in your book.
Must be time for another one. Some leaders wouldn't see the value of it, though. So what would you say to encourage them to?
I think if somebody was a bit concerned about a whole week, is to start with a day, take a Sabbath from your digital devices, keep them away for a Sunday or a Saturday. Yeah. But I think we need longer now. We need a few sleeps of waking up and falling asleep without the device and out of our normal space. And it doesn't have to be a pilgrimage where you potentially go and walk or you in silence. It can be fun. I've been to some festivals that I wouldn't say they're pilgrimages, but, like Africa Burn, which is a place where you can go and you express yourself and there's music and dancing and it's so out of the ordinary. The reason why I went was because of Stephen Kotler. He's the author of Stealing Fire and a few other books, and he specializes in flow states. Yeah. And he was saying how some companies, especially the tech companies in the west coast of America was sending people to Burning Man so that they could go and have creative insights, And that's what got me curious. I had never been to a festival like that. And then I went to the one in Africa Burn, and it was transformational.
So how many have you been on then altogether?
3.
Right.
3 of those. And then I've done a few other 1-week shamanic type experiences where you spend a lot of time understanding nature, and you'll have somebody come on. Like the last one I went to was run by a person who would identify as being a druid.
Okay.
So, and Celtic roots, and it was fascinating. That was in Somerset.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I went on a retreat in Somerset, which was at a kind of druid type place, which was interesting.
And then recently I went to the south of France to follow some of the sacred sites of Mary Magdalene and the Cathars. And of course that connects to my history.
Yeah.
So, I'm fascinated by that.
Do you need to be guided by someone, or could someone just think, right, okay, I'm thinking that's a good place to do a pilgrimage and just set off? What would you recommend?
I would recommend that you're guided, or you're part of a group. I mean, the last pilgrimage I did in the south of France, there were just 6 of us, and then there was a couple that led it. It was incredible because, we'd have circles of discussion at night, and it was in the sharing. I learned more, not through my own experience, but witnessing others. And we change most when we are witnessed, I feel. I would go guided.
It's coming across very loud and clear to me that, a lot of the stuff you do with leaders and boardrooms is through your own experience and your own transformation process. Talk to me about your own transformation. A number of people who've been on this podcast have had some kind of midlife transformation of one kind or another. Have you been through a really low point and come out the other side?
I think a low point for me was at the age of 18. I left the Catholic Church and joined a conservative Christian community, and I was there for 18 years and got married in that. And then when I got divorced, I not only got divorced, which is in itself a rite of passage to go through, but I left that community.
Right.
And then I had to really reevaluate. I felt very lost. It's the reason why I left South Africa and came to the United Kingdom 8 years ago. I just thought I need a new place where I can rediscover who I am without a patriarchal kind of control of what I could say, where, do, and what was I going to be if I wasn't following that Bible compass anymore. And that's where I got interested in nature.
Okay.
And
so how old were you when you got divorced?
36.
Okay. And talk to me about that process, because I've also been through it, and it was horrendous for many years. Took me a long time to recover. So how long would you say how long did it take you to come out the other side, and when did you? I mean, I think with those experiences, certainly for me, you can talk for yourself, but I'm now so pleased it happened, because I've changed and transformed along with various other things that have happened to me. I'm so grateful for these seemingly negative times, because I know I've changed for the better on this side of it. Was it the same for you?
Absolutely. And our story was actually quite lovely. We were good friends. And so it wasn't... There were moments that were very difficult, but now, I'm still in contact with his parents, for instance. I have a lot of love and respect for them. So, and we don't have children, so there was no reason for us to also stay connected. So I think that made it perhaps easier. And I'm deeply grateful for who I became during the marriage, because I wouldn't be who I am without that experience.
So if you could have your life again, would you choose to go through that or not?
We were discussing that exact question this weekend, and all 3 of us said that there's nothing we would change, because we feel that we could all see what the learning was, which makes me wonder what else is still coming.
Well, that's the extraordinary thing, isn't it? Because I've had people sitting in that chair where you're sitting, and one of them had a really advanced form of leukemia, and he was in hospital for a year. And I asked him if he could rewind the clock. He said he would choose to go through that again, even though it was absolutely horrendous, because he can see the benefit of it. I mean, it's bizarre, isn't it? I mean...
Well, I think part of what creates a lot of stress for us is when we label things as good or bad. The Japanese, I like their approach because they have special terms for how there is no good or bad, or like, it's not like summer and spring just because there's flowers is more beautiful than the winter when the trees are all bare. So these experiences that we go through, definitely, it's only us who label them as good or bad. I might go through something and I think it's terrible. Somebody else might go through it and have complete different points of reference and think it was an incredible experience for them.
I think that's wise advice, actually. Stop labelling stuff.
Yeah, get out of that duality.
Let's talk about the menopause, because I know this is something you also talk about, and I guess that's another transformation point.
Yes.
What's your wisdom on that?
It's hard. There are moments, about, I think it was in October, the end of October, beginning of November, I had another wave. I had the first wave in January 21, and I thought I was in a complete adrenal fatigue. And I'm very keen to talk about this more. And that's the one-on-one work that I do is I'm very happy to work with one woman, just a handful at a time, who feel that they're open to exploring the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical side of menopause. I think it's a beautiful rite of passage. There's just not enough information, and the generations before us weren't speaking about it.
No. And it's your experience of businesses and companies you go into, are they talking about the menopause enough?
No, and I work mostly with men, and I can see that they want to, but they don't know what to do. And the woman, I didn't know, still don't always know what I need. So I can't expect the men around me who love and care for me to know. So there's wonderful opportunity for us to really come together and to take away the shame and to make it a beautiful, beautiful rite of passage.
And what would you recommend for a company that we know we want to talk about this more? How do they start?
Gosh.
Apart from inviting you in.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Thank you, Paul. No, I mean, there's a book that I found life-changing written by two authors. One of them is a South African. It's called Wise Power. It's a very good book about this journey. And they take a very practical, pragmatic, as well as deeply spiritual view on it. And lots of very good tips, to go through. So, I don't know.
And is there what is the equivalent for the male of the menopause? Because I think men need to have some, some transformation process too. So what is it for them, and how can they learn from the women in their life about transformation?
Well, I think when we are curious about ourselves and then each other, we then would learn more about ourselves too, because if men took interest in understanding and reading up, and the women are not going crazy. They literally, if we have teenagers going through adolescence, we forgive them when they seem to forget stuff or act a bit out of tune, but we're also going through brain state changes. And I know there's not a lot written about it, but men definitely would go through, all of us approaching midlife and beyond. Richard Rohr speaks so much about this in, what's his book, Falling Upwards.
Yeah.
And also, I think in today's society, men don't come together enough. We don't sit around the fire anymore and talk. And men need that kind of... So sometimes in the retreats I run, it's not about the boardroom. It's actually lovely when we can get out. And I like to then use vineyards because of my connection to champagne. And I've got a body of work where I use the champagne-making process as a metaphor for well-being and resilience. I'd like to have more conversations about this.
Yeah. Well, I've heard your talk on effervescence and champagne, which I absolutely loved, and even better in a vineyard when you can have a little celebration at the end of the day.
Yes.
The time is going ridiculously quickly, so I wanted to get on to, we've touched on it, but I wanted to talk more about your own spirituality. How would you describe your spirituality, and what is spirituality? It's a word that has different meanings for different people. How would you define it?
I'm currently wanting to define it, but for me the word spirit makes me think of the word for breath. I think it's nefesh, or in Hebrew, and it's the life force.
Ruach.
That's yes. That it's that spirit, that electric current that for me comes from some kind of infinite source. So I'm currently in a finite package of a skin suit. But the life force in me, so if something had to happen to me this evening and I die and take my last breath, that breath will go somewhere, that electric spark, and it's where that goes to is what I'm deeply interested in at the moment. Because I don't think it's a me journey on my own. I think we're all connected, and we use words like the matrix and collective consciousness, but I'm really intrigued by that.
Do you think you'll find out the answers to that?
I'm going to enjoy finding out because at the moment, I'm looking into shamanism around it, but there's also the quantum. So Dr. Joe Dispenza and what he's doing around meditation and brain states and managing energy. But there's also the Kabbalah and there's the Enneagram, which has roots in mathematics, and there's the tarot, and there's all the different religions. Well, I think religion is maybe not seen good in terms of it taking spirituality and then boxing it and saying, well, we right and you wrong. Because we're human and we're alive, that makes us all the same.
I mean, it's extraordinary how much science seems to be backing up this stuff that people have talked about for thousands of years. And I think the more we go on, the more we understand, well, the more we realise that everything, actually, there is a science to everything.
And even though we label it as all so different, we're all saying the same things. Just last week I watched a documentary called Christspiracy, and they look at multiple religions, and a lot of them have got some common grounding in like compassion and cultivating that for yourself and your neighbor. We just don't always see that in practice because of the influence of religion, politics, power, greed.
And your spiritual practices, what do you do on a regular, apart from pilgrimages, which is a kind of special time, but your day-to-day, how do you connect with yourself?
I really enjoy spending time meditating, and for me that looks like sitting still and trying to drop out of that beta brain state into deeper, almost lucid dreaming. I also enjoy doing breath work, so I do different types of breathing techniques, things like Kundalini yoga or holotropic breathing, where you breathe quite strongly and you shift the pH of your body and your neurochemistry, and you can have visions and deep insight. And we also know now that trauma is held in the fascia, and the fascia then can release it. So you don't have to understand what's happening, but you might feel grief or sadness or anger. I also, probably not often enough, but I let myself release anger through safe ways, like punching pillows or shouting. It depends where I am.
Didn't expect that. Oh, okay.
And crying. I sometimes purposefully listen to music that makes me cry.
And cold plunges, I heard someone told me.
Yes, I went through a phase and I did that, but now that I'm not near a cold body of water, I don't. So I love contrast therapy. So I go to my gym and I always do the sauna, and then I go to a cold shower. I really enjoy that.
And do you know the science, why that's good for you?
Multiple reasons. So sauna, for instance, stimulates lymphatic and detoxification, and the perspiration boosts, it also gets your metabolism going. And I just feel great afterwards. And that's a form of what we call eustress, where you create stress, but you're choosing it. And I sometimes, if I'm struggling with a concept, or I know I'm going to have a difficult conversation, or I've got to manage some kind of conflict, I'll sit in the sauna or go into the cold plunge, and you have to regulate your state. Otherwise, you'll just go into fight or flight and want to escape. And you do that through your breathing. And then I'll sometimes say to myself, if I can do this and stay here for the next 15 minutes, I can have that conversation. So I often apply things. My friends often say that I ritualize everything. And I do. I just like to give things meaning. When we give things meaning, things become meaningful.
Well, I think rituals are important. I mean, they've always been important, haven't they, over history? And I think we've
lost a lot of that, so much.
Apart from the ritual of picking up your phone and scrolling obsessively on social media, which isn't a good one. I mean, I think rituals are important for businesses as well, aren't they? Are there? Do you sometimes put in place rituals and habits for business leaders?
I've never thought of it in that way. I mean, I speak about them having their own rituals and how they could potentially bring that into, let's say, like what you do with meetings. I don't know if the word ritual would be boardroom friendly yet.
Habit.
Maybe habits, or behavior. Yeah. I often speak about behavior interrupters. So like before you go straight from one team's call to the next team's call, can you get up for a minute and do heart-focused breathing, or shake and release, or get a glass of water and then carry on? Those can become small rituals. Or the end of the day, washing your hands, changing your clothes and telling yourself, that's over, I'm now transitioning into another part of my day, can be a powerful ritual.
Are you encouraged at the moment or depressed about how things are in the world? And in particular, a lot of people who listen to this are in the world of business, which you are too. do you think we're in a good place or a bad place at the moment in terms of all this, the well-being side I'm talking, obviously?
I did label it as bad, and then I realized that's exactly what I think we should not be doing.
Yep.
So now I look at what's happening, and I'm like, and I'm deeply influenced by Dr. Zach Bush, and how even something as bad as war or deep fracking for oil, now what they're seeing with the fracking, as because of the deep underground disturbances, we're releasing huge water aqueducts, and water is now rising up in places where there was desertification. So that looked like it was bad, but the earth clearly maybe made that happen so that now
You're not encouraging people to frack.
I'm not. But I think we get very upset about things without knowing the full picture. And just like we were just saying, we look back on our lives, and someone who was here who had something as serious as leukemia for a year can look back and say, I would choose that again. I think there's a bigger picture, and I'm trusting that I'm part of this unfolding, and I chose to, on some level, be here at this time. And I can't solve everything, and I don't need to. And in my small way, I'm an activist for helping people alchemize joy through their well-being, through understanding what they can do themselves, and as leaders influence the people that look up to them.
I love that phrase, alchemize.
It's a word I meditate on a lot, actually.
The final thing, really, before we start to wind up, I want to talk to you about as a difficult area. I know your mum currently has got Alzheimer's, and you've said that your life is being shaped by watching her live with Alzheimer's. Talk to us about that.
Well, I never wanted children, so I don't have children. I'm starting to see my mum almost as taking on the role of being my daughter.
Okay.
Sure, I can feel the emotion come up. I haven't said that out loud before like that. And everybody seems quite upset when you mention Alzheimer's or dementia. And once again, that's labeling something as bad. You know, I feel closer to my mom now, and I'm making the decision to spend a lot more time in France so I can be with her and my father over this next chapter, however long it's going to be. And she's teaching me so much through her sense of playfulness, and, you know, we attach so much to the intellect. When I'm just with her and holding her hand, that's as beautiful as her being able to talk to me about current affairs, or perhaps even more pleasant, you know. I think she's almost fortunate sometimes to not know exactly what's happening.
And how long ago was she diagnosed?
She was diagnosed at the beginning of last year, so not that long, but I noticed it during COVID. I could see things were shifting and changing, and now it's absolutely evident, but it's turning into a love story for our family. My brother has moved to France. Him and my father are so much closer. Wow. I'm going to be there more. I don't know. We're hanging out as a family more than we ever have in our lives. So I'm grateful.
It's a bit like what you just said, actually, isn't it? That something seemingly negative that you're not labeling as negative is good is coming through it.
And I know that it might get worse. Right now, it's still okay because she knows who she is, and, you know, it could potentially deteriorate. But we're not there yet. So all we have is the now. You know, we often spend so much energy worrying about the future or the past. So I want to focus on the now.
Well, thank you for being open and talking about that. Sorry, it's a difficult area. But what do you think in terms of your work? How do you think it'll change in the next 5 or 10 years?
So much.
In what way?
I think the more we go down the route of technology and AI, the more we're going to have a choice to, you know, some of us might become transhuman and want to embed more of that into us. And then there'll be some that want to really harness and leverage the inner ancient intelligence, become more human. I think we have wonderful opportunity to be like, if I do lose my job because of AI, or if I have more time, because that's what AI is doing for me. It's giving me more time. And I feel like I'm doing well with the open time. You know, I've started playing a musical instrument, and I want to go on more walks and visits, travel. And so it's going to give us an opportunity to ask ourselves, what would I do if I wasn't working? Because a lot of us over-identify. You know, the ego loves having a label and saying, this is who I am, this is what I do. And if that shifts and changes, it might not so much for leaders, but for many that they lead and employees, I think things are going to change rapidly in the next few years. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to connect with being as opposed to doing.
So you're recommending tapping into ancient wisdom rather than becoming a transhuman, are you?
I guess I am. Well, I'm going to do that and choose that route for sure.
Yeah, I think I might too. I'm probably too old to be
going to be the last free-range human.
Okay, so we better start winding up our time. There's a couple of questions that I ask all my guests. And the first one is a piece of advice that you wish you'd had before you started out.
To be more authentic and not worry about pleasing everybody, because I never will. And Elizabeth Gilbert said, a moment of discomfort is better than a lifetime of resentment. And that's taken me a long time. And it's only, I would say, because of menopause and being in my midlife, this journey, I just don't care that much anymore. And I like who I am. And so if I want to say and do something, I'm less worried about it being okay for everybody else. But I wish I had known that when I was 15.
You know what? Someone I was saying earlier this morning before I started recording said exactly the same. They're also similar age, and she said, I don't care what people think anymore. Exactly the same words you just said.
It's so liberating.
We need more people like that, don't we?
That's what I want to tell women.
They are the free-range humans. Bring them on. And was there any piece of advice that someone did give you that you've ignored?
Yes.
Well-meaning, though it may have been.
Still at the moment, to choose a lane and stick to your lane. Stick to one thing, get known. It's quite a masculine approach to things, like do one thing well,
yes.
as opposed to the feminine.
Yes.
And now I'm like, yes, I do performance chemistry. Yes, I've got the Wellculator. Yes, I work in boardrooms. But I also like walking in vineyards barefoot and taking leaders there and drinking champagne. So it's different lanes, and that's okay, because that's who I am authentically.
And was there a particular chapter in the Fourth Bottom Line that's resonating with you at the moment in terms of one of the 50 characteristics of leadership?
I loved curiosity. I jumped ahead. I think there was page 168, and I read that first. But the one that I have looked at that I feel I need to work on is the one around being non-judgmental. I've got a very strong inner critic. She has a field day. I often have to tell her to just sit down. It's okay, So I judge myself is what I'm saying. And then I notice myself judging others.
Yes. And that is the way around it happens, isn't it?
Because our external manifestation of our reality is always an internal, it's a mirror of what's happening internally. And so that's something I really took to heart, and I want to work on that. So at the moment when I notice my inner critic come on, I try and always say, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? So actually, just before the podcast, I accidentally triggered the water and it splashed over, and I said, "Isn't that interesting?" So it's working.
That's quite a good tip, isn't it? Yes. No, it's it's a big one. That actually, I mean, my dad was very, very judgmental, as well as being very into the performance thing, and it's taken me a while to change away from that.
Yeah, I think each of the lessons in your book could be a year's journey.
Probably. Pretty much. What I always say I'm thinking about this because I've got a big birthday this year, but it took me 50 years to learn how to live. And there are actually 50 chapters in that book, so maybe I was working on one each year. Not quite sure what I was working on at the age of 1, but look, we better finish because time has run out, sadly. I could talk to you for hours.
Same.
Yeah, so thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for your authenticity and honesty. Really appreciate that.
Thank you for the work you're doing and the space you're creating for us to not just share, but listen.
Okay, well, good. Thanks for coming on the Fourth Bottom Line.
Thank you, Paul.
We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Fourth Bottom Line. Please hit subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode, and do leave a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to learn more about my work, follow me on LinkedIn, visit my website, paulhargreaves.co.uk, or look out for my 2 books, Forces for Good and The Fourth Bottom Line. Thanks so much for listening.